Good morning to the members of the media and our viewing audience. Welcome to the People's National Congress Reform Press Conference for May 10, 2022. Today, I would like to introduce the panel here with me. We have Comrade Jermaine Figuera, Member of Parliament, to my right. To his right, there is Comrade Deron Adams, Regional Chairman of Region 10. And to his right, there is Comrade Elise Benjamin Hall. She's the chairman of the Works Committee for the RDC Region 10. And to her right, MP Ganesh Maipal, who is the Shadow Minister of Local Government. Today's press conference, we will focus in on the issues in Region 10. And as the members of the media and our viewing public would know, there are many issues in Region 10. So today's press statement may be a bit lengthy, if I may warn. So today's press statement will be read by Comrade Deron Adams, who is the Regional Chairman of Region 10.
Ladies and gentlemen of the press, Guyanese all, good morning, and it's a privilege to be here in the capital city. It is indeed a pleasure to be here to share with you what is going on in our country, especially in my constituency of Region 10, which also encompasses the town of Linden, and to get to focus on issues which directly affect the residents of these communities. Region 10 and Linden are facing the brunt of the PPP discrimination, marginalization, being starved of resources, incompetence, corruption, and the pursuance of domination and control by the PPP government. These will be exposed and opposed vigorously by our people. The People's National Congress Reform has always had a special relationship with the people of Linden and Region 10. Indeed, Region 10 has been especially supportive of the People's National Congress and of the coalition as part of the APNU. I want to thank the members of the Pncr who have reposed their confidence in me and elected me to the chairmanship of the 9th Regional Democratic Council of Region 10. My commitment to you is to always stand with the people of Region 10, to represent their concerns and champion our fight for the development of Linden and Region 10. While the rest of Guyana may not be familiar with the divisive and vile tactics that the PPP has employed to ensure that they punish the people of Region 10 and Linden for simply exercising their franchise to elect the people that they are certain can bring the type of development and quality of life that we desperately need, the people of our region are acutely attuned to the selfish and divisive politics of the PPP, which has no place in a modern society and is entirely the opposite of the inclusivity and comprehensive development that the People's National Congress and the APNU plus AFC bring to the governance of our people. Just yesterday, councillors, business people, and many other Lindeners came together in an effort of solidarity and support and rebuilt the home of a mother who was forced to spend Mother's Day without a roof over her head, simply because this PPP government decided that they have the force, guns, and equipment to force poor residents out of their homes by razing them to the ground with bulldozers. And yes, I said force and guns because the bulldozers were accompanied by members of the Guyana Police Force to enforce a letter from the Central Housing and Planning Authority demanding that the residents remove by May 12, 2022. Check your calendars to verify that today is indeed Tuesday, May 10th, 2022. Today is still not even close to the deadline. This notice gift to that mother and others. But bulldozers ripped apart her shelter and put her out in the rain between May 5th and May 6th of 2022. This is what the PPP is doing in Region 10. But you do not see and hear this because their propaganda machinery tells you all of the lies about what they are purportedly doing for the people of my region. The reality is Region 10, inclusive of Linden, is being victimized, ostracized, and punished by the PPP regime. Since the 2nd of August 2022, when the PPP was installed in government, youths in Linden continue to be laid off from entities such as the St. John's Ambulance Brigade, the Pncr Assistance Program, the National Data Management Agency, and the many other entities. The PPP is placing Lindeners on the breadline. While the Vice President waives an offer of 800 temporary jobs that were supposed to be made available in 3 weeks, our people do not have temporary needs. Children do not have temporary needs for food and shelter. Lindeners need a plan to create jobs. The PPP has no such plan. While the Vice President has proclaimed his head of the Linden Hospital Complex a wild card guy, the VP is silent as the wild card guy continues to lay off employees at the Linden Hospital Complex, whose appraisals show that they have been doing exemplary jobs. What is worse is that the hospital wild man is allowed to use our taxes to build Trumpian walls in defiance of our building and safety codes, and refuses to fill vacancies so that our residents can find permanent work to sustain their families and receive better healthcare services. The PPP continues to impose this type of mismanagement and disrespect for workers in the health sector in Region 10. Nurses' salaries have been slashed to the extent that some have been forced to take home Guyana $300 for a month of work as a healthcare professional, simply for standing up for their right against a tyrant who disrespects and denigrates them. The PPP boasted of having trained 184 persons through the Board of Industrial Training in Linden. Having trained them, they have created no jobs for them. These are simply nearly 200 more persons that the PPP intends to continue to marginalize and trample, since the PPP has no plan to employ them. They have no coherent strategy to ensure that these skills are utilized for national development. But let us say for a moment that these persons may want to pursue entrepreneurship and want to become employers rather than employees. The PPP has ensured that this avenue for development is firmly shut in the face of residents of Linden and Region 10 by emasculating the Linden Enterprise Network, taking away its ability to empower entrepreneurs with supportive loans and refusing to reconstitute its board of directors. Indeed, even the staff of LEN faces difficulties receiving their salaries, and month to month, the uncertainty of what will happen next with this much needed entity remains up in the air as the PPPs starving of resources take a tighter grip on residents of Region 10. The PPP must stop starving Region 10 and Linden of resources. The Linden Hospital Board remains in the same situation, with no board appointed to provide proper oversight of this important facility. These are serious developmental projects that the coalition government had been pursuing for the people of Region 10, that we need to continue to bring into focus and exert the necessary pressures on the current administration to ensure that they are executed. I speak here of the commencement of work on the Linden to Lethem Road, upgrading of the port facilities at Lower Christianburg and at the alumina plant, the construction of a new bridge across the Demerara River at Linden, the resuscitation of the airstrip and attendant facilities at Linden, the rehabilitation of the Linden to Georgetown Highway, upgrade of the Farm to Market Road from Millie's Hideout to the Berbice River, and the development of agricultural lands along that corridor. Addressing the land tenure issues in acquiring the legal documentation to occupy, such as leases, titles, and transport, in a timely manner, and the upgrading of the road between Kokwani and Linden. If the PPP is serious about the development of Linden and Region 10, they must place these projects back in the budget. These coalition projects will bring development to the people of Region 10 and Linden. These are initiatives that the coalition saw as imperatives for the development of Region 10 and Guyana. These are projects of national significance and importance, and we will continue to push the PPP to put resources towards these projects promptly so that Region 10 and Guyana could reap the attendant benefits from these initiatives. Any delay in the execution of these projects puts the development of Linden and Region 10 on the back burner and is a signal to the people of Region 10 that the PPP does not care for the people of the region. We will continue to be vigilant and press the Ali administration to execute these projects in a timely manner. There is no attempt to even give lip service to providing for the people of Region 10, whom the PPP would want to claim they have at heart. When the RDC budgeted for vehicles to enable the agriculture development officers to provide services to the major farming communities in the Berbice River area, all were struck out of our budget, even while our farmers continue to clamor for these personnel to assist them. Produce including red peas, eddos, nuts, plantains, corns, and pumpkins go to waste, even as financing for the continued construction of the farm-to-market road from Millie's hideout at Linden is withheld, and no marketing support is provided. The completion of this access road needs to be placed back high on the development agenda to ensure that our food security is empowered. To do otherwise is to confirm that the PPP aims to stifle agriculture in Linden, in keeping with Ashni Singh's claim that other regions have the comparative advantage in agriculture. The PPP claims is ridiculous. Region 10 must be allowed to become self-sustainable in agriculture. The government came to Linden for a photo-op exercise called a cleanup campaign, even while they continue to starve the local government authorities in the region. The Linden Mayor and Town Council and the Kokwani NDC of resources to adequately maintain the cleanliness of these communities. Rather than provide these authorities with equipment, such as garbage trucks, or the resources to hire staff to undertake the continued execution of the cleaning of the town, they chose to do a one-off photo op to provide window dressing for their PR and channel funds into the pockets of PPP lackeys in Linden. The problem is there is no continuity of this exercise. And if the government is seriously interested in the well-being of the people of Linden and Kokwani, they should put resources into these local democratic areas. Why is the government not engaging in the cadastral surveys and the other attendant works necessary to have new housing areas handed over to the municipality to improve its revenue collection? These areas need services, but remain outside of the revenue generating net of the municipalities. These are serious questions we must ask of the current administration. But in the main, I think we know the answers to these questions already. They are bent on starving us of resources and marginalizing and impoverishing our people. We have seen the government focus instead on constructing roads through the Ministry of Public Works, to give the minister the opportunity to come here to pretend to deliver projects to the people, while these roads deteriorate within a matter of months. And yes, the road constructed in front of the Linden Hospital complex a few months ago already has several large potholes. Testimony to the poor quality of work that the ministry is providing to the people of Linden and Region 10. At the RDC, the government continues its campaign of ignoring the legally elected representatives of the people in many ways. And had it not been for the strong representation and actions the councillors of the 9th Regional Democratic Council, this situation would have been totally out of hand by now. Letters on important subjects written to ministers have been totally ignored. And when the president himself was written to, and this was pointed out, he too did not respond. How then could we address the issues of the call by residents for a fire station on the Wisma Shore, a dire need that residents have been calling for so many years now, How then could we get an answer to the call for a four-wheel drive fire tender to go into areas across Linden that the traditional fire tenders are poorly equipped to serve? And since Linden is not Region 10, it was only after going to the media on the issues of the need for a fire tender at Kukwani to replace the one that was parked up there but was not working for over a year that this situation was resolved, albeit with a tender that proved to be incapable of addressing a recent fire, resulting in the loss of millions of dollars for a logger in the community. How are these situations to be addressed if no interaction or acknowledgement of these issues are forthcoming after the Regional Democratic Council has taken pains to record and represent them to the minister? The PPP government just practices bad governance. While unemployment is an issue that severely impacts our youths and other sections of our populace, sports is an issue that is near and dear to our young people, but continues to be ignored by the PPP. The council has made calls for the appointment of a youth, culture and sports officer in Region 10, which has fallen on deaf ears. There are token efforts of building a small basketball court that has no apron, becoming very unsafe for those who utilize it, with much fanfare at its handover, while facilities they need, such as the synthetic track started under the coalition government, are stalled and stymied by this administration. This region, which boasts of producing Guyanese Olympians in track, field and swimming, has neither a synthetic track nor an Olympic-sized swimming pool to nurture the inherent talent of its residents. Central government has been largely ignoring the representation made by the elected representatives of the council and making their own determinations about the needs and resources to be provided to the region. They have been utilizing the waiver of tender board procedures to award friends of the government contracts that have been poorly executed without the necessary checks and balances of these procedures being followed. And when these issues are brought by the council to the attention of the local and national level tender board authorities, absolutely no response is provided. Almost $1 million a month is being paid to a party activist for the storage of health supplies in Linden, when the health department has a compound in Amelia's ward that has enough vacant space to build a new hospital if needed, much less a storage bond. The PPP clearly is encouraging high levels of corruption by its lackeys in Region 10. Even more than that, the chairman of the Public Works Committee of the RDC has not yet signed off on a single end-user certificate for a project here in Region 10. These certificates are how a project is recorded as being completed satisfactorily and on the basis of which the final payment is made. But in this case, the council is not allowed to verify that these projects are completed, but payments are made for substandard projects. This is another source of PPP corruption in Region 10. This is why we end up with a situation such as those obtained at Silvertongue, with the collapse of the road and drain, at Third Alley, with the poor construction of the drain, and at Christianburg Primary School, where a contractor could have left the site without clearing it or putting back the septic system he had removed from the church. They have recently broached the replacement of an agriculture scientist as head of the RDC's agriculture department with a political hack identified as a coordinator of agriculture, without at least consulting the council. They have appointed representatives of the council to the regional tender board, again, without the involvement of the regional council, and tried to change the RDC's budget submissions without the knowledge and approval of the RDC. The RDC building, which was deemed unfit for occupancy since the 5th council, was in place nearly 2 decades ago, and where septic backups flood the working quarters of employees has been unceremoniously deleted from the budget, as the PPP demonstrates its scant regard for the people of Region 10 yet again. The latest example of this is the signing of lease agreements at the Ministry of Amerindian Affairs for the villages of Malali and Hururu to engage in quarrying and logging respectively, totally without the knowledge and involvement of the RDC. At least the courtesy of informing the council would be expected, as these villages fall within Region 10. At Hururu, the council has already had the experience of being called in when things go wrong with these types of agreements, such as the one previously signed with the bauxite company at Araima, and even more recently, the requests for interventions with taking over management of the school there. And so the signing of these agreements with companies totally without the knowledge of the council is a cause for concern. In sub-region 2, the situation is worse, since the PPP feels that they could get away with ill-treating the residents of these communities because they are remote in nature. The hospital built by the coalition at Wiruni remains without a doctor and furnishing. These many years after completion, the river ambulance fought for by the residents and made a reality by the coalition remains stationed at Kokwani. So by the time a resident falls ill at, say, Kimbia, and the message reaches the boat is ready for response, the patient is already in hospital in New Amsterdam because their family cannot await movement from so far, and that untimely response. Calls for the ambulance to be stationed halfway along the river at Wiruni have been ignored, and the people continue to suffer the consequences. Pensioners along the Berbice River continue to report that now the officers come to distribute pensions once every 6 months, unlike the monthly distributions enjoyed when the coalition was in office. Even when they do appear, these officers sit in the boat and expect elderly pensioners to navigate the boat landings, to come to the boat to sign for their payments, rather than take the time to set up a desk on the shore at the various locations. And they sometimes disappear up or down river before pensioners are even aware that they are in the village for the payment of pensions. Projects which can be executed by residents of communities in the Berbice River are given to party sympathizers from the coast who rush in, do shoddy work, and leave the residents with the fallout of these substandard projects. Healthcare workers in these river communities have in some instances not received their salaries since January of 2021. The government needs to ensure that the people of the Berbice River get their pension every month. The list of overreach, mismanagement of the people's affairs, and anti-developmental actions of the government in Linden and Region 10 is too extensive to be adequately addressed in this manner. However, I am putting the government on notice that we are aware of these actions and will continue to take the PPP government to task to ensure that good governance prevails. I am convinced that good governance will only truly prevail with the coalition returning to government. And so that my team and I will continue to engage and mobilize the people of Linden and Region 10 and Guyana to ensure that this happens in the very quickest possible time. Again, I thank everyone for the welcome they have given my team and me, the confidence that they have reposed in my team and me, and we look forward to working together to resolve these issues to the benefit of all of the people of Guyana. I thank you.
Thank you, Comrade Adams. At this time, we will take questions from the member of the media in regards to the press statement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And of course, as usual, you will indicate by the raise of hand and you will state your name and your media house as we proceed. I see the hand of Mr. Adam Harris. Go ahead. 1 second, Mr. Adamar.
I mean, I'm sorry I always gotta be like pot salt opening this thing, but Linden, I'm worried about. Comrade Chairman, what is the purpose of the Regional Democratic Council? A lot of things seem to be happening, and all you can do is report these things. Are you proactive? Were there discussions, for example, the demolition of some of these houses? Were you involved? Did you have a say? What actually is happening with the RDC?
Thank you for your question, Mr. Harris. Let me just, from the onset, indicate that the Regional Democratic Council is the highest planning decision-making body in the region. It is the institution that has been given the mandate to coordinate and which actually sets the direction for all of the social and economic developmental agendas or initiatives in the region. What we have seen is central government largely ignoring the representation of the council. So it places us between a rock and a hard place. No notices were given on the exercise or the operation that you would have been conducted a few days ago. Unfortunately, this is an action that has been happening from October 2020, when we were elected. Ministers come into the region, officials from Central Housing and Planning come into the region. There is no indication, neither by the RDC or the MNTCs of these visits. You have the Minister of Foreign Affairs coming into the region, going into communities. Region 10 doesn't have any foreign policy or anything that we're dealing with. So you ask the question, why is the regional government not being given the opportunity to function?
Courtesy.
Right? The courtesy to operate and to represent the people. We live in the communities. We have councillors that have been assigned to every community across the region. Yet when simple things like distribution of, I'll give you an example, hampers coming for the hardest flood hit region,
PPP hacks,
which should come through the RDC from the Civil Defense Commission. That is not the case. What we see happening is that they are sent to a political activist, the Prime Minister's representative, who gives them out as he feels, as he wishes. And so the people who are genuinely affected by flooding are not getting the hampers, whether it's cash grants that are being distributed. These things are all being hijacked. You look at the so-called temporary jobs,
none are delivered,
which we heard a hue and a cry that 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago. No one has been called to date. We haven't seen a structure. They haven't contacted the RDC as to informing the RDC of how these jobs will be rolled out. What we notice is that the applications had to be sent to political activists rather than utilizing the elected component of the council or the region, who is better prepared to interact with the constituents. And so this is a challenge that we have been having. We have been writing letters in this folder. There are letters that have been written to ministers, to the president, you name it. You had another issue where matters of welfare, where persons under the coalition, recognizing the challenges that we inherit pre-2015, many persons who are on public assistance, for example, under the coalition government, that figure was increased to about 800. What we have seen happening without any consultation with the RDC, the Minister Vidya Prasad came into the region, installed an 8-member board, all Indo-Guyanese, in a predominantly Afro community. And what they have been doing is taking persons off of the public assistance program with no clear plan in place of transition for these people. And that has been an exercise that has been happening across the board. You look at the ICT in the region. Under the coalition government, First Lady Sandra Granger came to Linden, trained over 120 young people in ICT. The Board of Industrial Training was involved. And what we did is there was always a program to ensure that there was continuity. So you train in ICT, You continue by empowering them. You provided employment through the National Data Management Agency. You train healthcare workers. You provided employment through the Patient Care Assistant Program. Over 60 persons were employed in Linden. I have dismissal letters in this folder where the CEO from the Linden Hospital Complex has been firing innocent Lindeners. And so this is something that we brought to the international community. I was on many programs highlighting these. Pensioners, the Darfolk home, where the coalition rebuilt the area there, the Darfolk home, that building. This government sent their officials to throw all the senior citizens' materials out, the crafts that they prepared, and attempted to remove them from that building to convert it into a quarantine facility. We have ventilated all of these issues. Ministers have been written in the case of Vidya Prasad. No response.
Pensioners in the barbershop.
Right? And so we thought it prudent to come at the national level here in Georgetown, in the capital city, to see if we will get some traction. Because over the past 2 years, persons have been targeted strategically and intentionally. You had a case where Region 10, the wild card guy, put handcuffs on the gates, locked healthcare workers out, fired nurses. In fact, when you look at the pay slip of healthcare workers, $300 after working for us in a pandemic, you drop a nurse salary to 300 Guyana dollars, and this is just one. There were over 100 nurses who were protesting his distasteful comments, and this is what he proceeded to do.
Erecting a fence without the council.
Erecting a fence right now at the hospital complex. I don't know for what. It has to be a Trump wall.
Preventing
to prevent
vehicles.
Innocent people and emergency vehicles from entering the hospital. Easy access. He has told doctors and nurses to don't park their vehicles in the compound. The hospital bus that would normally pick up persons at Amelia's Ward, he has instructed the driver to pass healthcare workers along the Amelia's Ward Road. On the day when President Ali came to Linden, and we made a request for house slots to be made available, the very next day, Rudy Small sent a letter to doctors to vacate the doctors' quarters. And you claim that you love the doctors and you love healthcare workers. Well, this is unacceptable.
Wild man.
Right? Wild card Rudy, but will not be sent to any other region. He wouldn't be sent to Region 6, or he wouldn't be sent to Region 2, but he's placed in Region 10. Walking around, it is alleged, with his gun in his waist, intimidating nurses. They are fearful to speak out. Right now, if you check the records of the Linden Hospital Complex, we are losing our professionals, the institutional memory. Over 50 nurses have already migrated to the UK. Another batch is scheduled to leave soon. The PR person who worked for Rudy Small, who he inherited, I believe, from Dr. Raizat, had to cut and run.
Bring back Raizat.
Yeah, you know, so these are some of the cases, and I want the media to know that when you see action like what occurred 2 days ago on Mother's Day, where a house was pushed down, I believe that one, and the other comrades across the other regions, our members of parliament, need to take note, because I firmly believe that the PPP tends to distract you with the obvious while they are doing something else in some other part of the country. Because I can't see in any right-thinking Guyanese sense that you will go and push down a house with an elderly woman in it, a house that has children in it on Mother's Day. It has to be a distraction as to some other illegal activity that is happening in either some other region or some other thing. And so we need the media to be more proactive in covering, one, what is happening in Region 10. You know, it is just a sad situation. And so to answer your question, we have been making the representation. I have been on many programs. Even at the last meeting I spoke at Watuka House, we said it clear. We are not given an opportunity to go on NCN. They do not carry our positions. We have slipped back into a dictatorship. If you check over the past 6 months on NCN Linden's channel, you will not see one statement accurately carried by the RDC through the office of the regional chairman. And this should be a concern to both the media and the international community.
Thank you. I see the hand of Mr. Wendell.
Hi, good afternoon, Mr. Adams. Thank you very much. So, could you please clarify to me before I proceed to ask my question that you said that $1 million is being paid to a political activist to store medical supplies?
Close to $960,000.
Close to $1 million, and it is just a meager amount, maybe it's 998,000, is being paid to the Prime Minister's rep to store, I don't know whether it's condoms, whether it's masks, but one of the things that we want the media to first of all intervene and to verify is if that bond has reached the standard outlined by PAHO or WHO or the Ministry of Health, because we firmly believe it's a slush fund. So you can visit Greenheart Street and you will see the bond.
Okay, my question, sir,
food stuff.
do you
That's being stored as
have
well.
any sort of evidence pointing to the fact that this award, so to speak, is not in keeping with the accepted protocols or the laws governing such awards? And with regard to the bulldozing of the home you spoke of, the ministry subsequently released some information suggesting that a number of Lindeners have benefited from an exercise following that bulldozing activity. Could you say if that very person, that elderly person you speak of, is one of the beneficiaries?
So let me just indicate to you that I have seen no legal document. Nothing has been placed in writing. And I can say to you that I will not trust anything that the administration say. We were told that we were going to get a new RDC building. It has been removed from the budget. We were told that, persons would not lose their jobs. That has not been done. We were told that over 800 would have been employed in 3 weeks. That has not been done. So unless I see it in writing, whatever meeting was had yesterday, and from my information that I have on the ground, what was said to the residents, many of them are not satisfied with what was said to them. In fact, this is an issue that we have been saying. If Ministry of Housing comes into this region, the right thing to do is to connect with the regional officials or the municipality. Have a meeting. Yesterday, what we understood is that they cordoned off an area. They had one person speaking and trying to put a spin. You're actually seeing houses mashed up on the ground, but the minister is saying that nobody's house was bulldozed. In fact, we are awaiting information because there are two names that are being called that allegedly received money, PPP activists. A Fraser who has the PPP flag flying at the top of his house, and a Powers. And we call for an investigation to be taken immediately to understand who was receiving these monies, if it was true, and what have they been doing it, because I never knew that Mr. Powers was working at Central Housing and Planning. So we have evidence of the area that was bulldozed. Again, I invite you to come to the region. Yesterday, the minister said that no houses were bulldozed. You can come to the region and, take your shots.
We built back the home.
Thank you. Any other questions by the member of the media?
Shanika, if I may, please.
You may go ahead.
Thank you very much. With reference to the question that was asked by Mr. Adam Harris, and with reference to the functions of the regional democratic councils, one must know that by law, Chapter 2809, regional democratic councils are mandated to carry out and make decisions in terms of policy and guidance for the benefit of the region. The people who sit on these RDCs are elected officials, and they are elected by way of a regional election. And we must recognize that only in regions 4, 7, and 10, there seems to be a problem with this administration, the PPP administration, and the functioning of these elected officials. In Region 1, we have Brentnall Ashley. He is not having any problem in terms of the way he is functioning because the PPP government is respecting the RDC in that region, and primarily because the RDC councillors there are PPP oriented in majority. In Region 2, we have Ms. Vimla. She is not having any problem either because they are all PPP majority in that region. Region 3, we have Inshan Ayub. He is not having any problem either because the majority of the council are PPP oriented. We have in Region 4, Daniel Siram. He is having similar problems to that of Region 10, making reference to their budget submission. It did not come through the RDC Council, as opposed to what happened in Region 1, 2, and 3. And Region 5, we have Mr. Viknan Ramphal. He is not having any problem either because majority of the councillors there are PPP oriented. Region 6, we have Armagon. He's not having any problem. Majority PPP councillors again. Region 7, we have Kenneth Williams. He is having a series of problems because majority of the councils are APNU AFC oriented. Region 8, we have Mr. Headley P.O. He is not having any problem because he was installed by way of the controversy we had there, and he has the PPP on his side also. Region 9, we have Brian Alicock. He is not having any problem, majority PPP. Region 10, we have Darren Adams. He is facing similar problems like Daniel Siram and Kenneth Williams. So I'm saying that to say to you that the People's Progressive Party Civic has no respect and no regards for the members of the councils that are in the majority of the APNU AFC, meaning region number 4, region number 7, and region number 10. These councils were elected by the people of the respective regions, and we must give them the respect. The government, the PPPC, must give them the respect as they are doing with the other councils. When you look at budgetary allocations for these regions, Region 1, you see an increase in their allocation. Region 2, Region 3, Region 5, Region 6, Region 8, Region 9, you see an increase in their budgetary allocation and as recent as 2022. But what do you see for Region 4, 7, and 10? You see a reduction in their budgetary allocation. It is a reduction in the sense of the RDC allocation. So don't get me wrong, I'm talking about specifically the line item that is allocated to the Regional Democratic Council that allows the councillors to travel in the region, that allows them to give assistance when necessary, that allows them to hold meetings so that they can make decisions. That particular line item, you're seeing a significant reduction. It tells the story. This administration has no regards and no respect for the people of Region 4, 7, and 10 because they did not vote for them. Thank you, Shiniko.
You're welcome, MP. I will start. I see the hand of Amor, and you will just, because I don't know the name, you'll give your name and your media house.
Hey, Vanessa Moore from Info 10 in Linden.
Okay.
So my question is to MP Figueroa as well as Regional Chairman Adams. Can you say specifically, the minister is accusing the elected officials of trying to stymie development within the housing sector, and both of you would have mentioned having an issue with the demolition exercise being carried out without adequate notice. Is that the only issue, or do you guys also have an issue with the entire exercise?
Well, if I can go to this question first. We have an issue with the entire exercise, particularly in how it is affecting Linden people. And yes, we recognize that they are squatters. I was told by someone on the ground that the minister accused me of encouraging squatting. I don't encourage squatting. But the fact of the matter is squatting has occurred in this particular part of the community, of which over 900 Londoners would have gone into that location that was designated for farming from the outset, cleared the land. A lot of women, a lot of single parent women went into that community and chopped down trees, high bushes, and cleared the land and made it habitable, which resulted in over 900 plus Linden people, and some of those individuals are as far as from Essequibo, I'm told, are also occupying areas in that particular community. And the fact of the matter is those persons were there since 2014 and they were living there. They built a life there. One of the homes that was destroyed is from a woman who is from Essequibo, and she, I am told, ran away from a domestic violence situation. And she was living under 4 posts that was put up, covered with a plastic to escape the life that she was experiencing there. So a lot of these women and men, young people included, went to that area and carved out a plot of land. They hired a surveyor, recognizing the need for order. They paid a surveyor to carve out lots and road passageways for the transport of their building materials to start building their homes. I am saying the fact that squatting has occurred, just like how it has occurred in many parts of Guyana, where the government went in and regularized squatting, we are saying that this particular community should also be regularized. And the first priority must be given to the squatters. And it must be given in recognition of the fact that they went and squat on the basis that they cannot afford to pay those exuberant prices that this government is offering Guyanese. People are paying close to $3 million for a plot of land. I mean, it's ridiculous in a country that has such a small population and vast amount of lands, and Guyanese are forced to pay such a large sum of money. So we are saying give the people who have been there first preference. And the minister was disingenuous in saying that houses weren't damaged and properties weren't damaged. The fact is we were on the ground. It was shown to the world that scores of people who occupy that area, be it squatting or otherwise, their properties were damaged, and it was damaged by the order given by CHNPA. And we're saying to CHNPA, these are industrious Guyanese, many of them who would have struggled to buy their resources, to build their homes, to build their foundations, to put down fence. They must be compensated. These are people who have made significantly grave sacrifices to acquire these materials, to acquire these resources. And the government cannot willy-nilly step in unconscionable and break down these people's property without any position of compensation. If they are going to allocate them, we need the government to give all assurance, as the regional chairman said. We cannot take the word of this government as is, because many of the promises they have made to the Guyanese people, they have failed to deliver on such. And Linden people, with our encouragement, will not accept a promise made by this government. If they are going to reallocate persons, they must put it in writing. If they are going to be promising housing units to individuals whose houses that they would have pushed down. One of those women, a 60-plus-year-old woman, was in the house when CHMP ordered the contractor to push down the house while the woman was inside. If they are going to be given a housing unit to this individual, we need to see that in writing. We are of the view that squatting is illegal, but the fact of the matter is a lot of communities birthed out of squatting, and it requires government intervention to go into those communities and regularize it in a manner that is beneficial to the people. The minister said also that I am against development. Certainly not. I am pro-development. And the fact of the matter is they are the one who's stymieing development in Linden. A lot of the small businesses in the community are starved of access to funds. particularly those funds, millions of dollars stored up in Linden Enterprise Network, and the community's business people, young people, cannot have access to those funds because the government is stymieing development, not me. We are a community that possess the country's most elite and promising athletes. Our hope and prospects of having Olympian going to the Olympics and garnering medal, the majority of those athletes are from Linden and Region 10. And we believe that the position that the coalition would have recognized and invested in the start of a synthetics track is being stymied. The sporting athletes, the development of sports in Guyana and more so in Linden and Region 10 is being stymied by this administration. Agriculture is being stymied by this government in power. A lot of our farmers were discriminated, especially those who were affected by the flooding, who would have lost their crop, their livestock, and their poultry. They were discriminated because they're from Region 10. Access to farmlands in Mili's hideout in West Watuko are being stymied because the government is failing to put the development that is required for farmers to have access to those farmlands so that they can ensure that the region achieves some form of food security. That is stifling development, not me. It is the government. The bridge that is in dire need of being redone, the government of the day had taken off that bridge of the budget from having budgetary allocation. That is stymieing development, not me. A lot of deplorable roads within the community are not being upgraded, are not being catered for, especially the proposed roads that the Regional Democratic Council would have proposed. All of those developmental projects that the region elected officials would have put to this administration were taken off of the budget for 2022. So when it comes to those allegations of stymieing development, the government needs to look in the mirror and not accuse me.
Thank you, MP. I see the hand of Mr. Dennis Chabral. You can go ahead.
Are you hearing me?
Yes, we're hearing you now.
Yes. I wanted to touch on the issue of capacity, the capacity of the Linden Construction Center. Can you, Mr. Chairman, or perhaps Mr. Figueroa, say what is the capacity that's available within Linden to deal with large and medium scale projects to actually bid and successfully, hopefully, awarded those contracts for the medium and large scale projects?
Well, if I can jump on this first, the regional chairman on numerous occasions, including myself, would have made it known to the populace that over 70% in last year's budgetary allocation with regards to contracts were given to contractors outside of the region. If we are going to foster a situation in which Linden people and residents of Region 10, the contractors in particular, can build capacity, then the force must first be given opportunities for small contracts. Even those contracts are being denied for the contractors in the community. We have contractors with the capacity, with the connections to garner the equipment that is required to handle those big contracts. But the sad reality is they're not being afforded the opportunity under this administration, and it is blatant. 70% of the awards of contract is given to contractors outside of the region when the budgetary allocation is to develop the people and the region in totality, and you are discriminating against our local contracts. How can they graduate from small to large scale contracts when they are not even given an opportunity? So with that said, we are of the view that the government needs to be more deliberate in helping the region to develop by giving the region people capacity to build and eventually satisfy what is required of those large contracts, of which we are confident that we have the capabilities. Region 10 is a very skilled region. The world knows that. And we just want the opportunities to be made available to us. And this government is discriminating against this region, particularly because it's a coalition stronghold.
Thank you.
As it stands now, though, Mr. Figueroa, are there any records to show that these small contractors have actually been submitting applications for contracts?
Right there.
Of course. There's a process where persons have to make their submission, even in the case where they are what you refer to as three coats. And I'll speak specifically to those persons residing in the Berbice River. On my visit there recently, contractors in the Berbice River complained that under the previous government, when a project was to be executed in an Amerindian community, let's say Wiruni or Kimbia, those projects were awarded to residents from the community. Because they live there, I dare think that they would attempt to do substandard work when it's given to them. But when you bring somebody from Region 6 or Region 5 to build a yard hut or to build a septic tank, you know, and they don't employ, they bring everybody in, you know, how do you intend or claim that you have a plan to empower persons in the region? So even these contracts do not require, the ones that do not require you to have heavy duty equipment or bulldozers or excavators, none of them are going to the residents who submitted tenders in the communities. And even when a tender comes out, it is somebody that is affiliated to the current administration. The drain that collapsed in Silvertown, that contractor went on to receive about 4 more contracts in the Berbice River. And he is not a resident from Region 10. And on the first visit by the minister, both the Minister of Labor, he is the one that indicated that they are going to train and empower people so that they can benefit from contracts, along with the local government minister. Clearly, we have seen them deviate from that, and you know.
I have indicated, Dennis, to the regional executive officer that what would have occurred in 2021 will not be occurring in 2022. If we have to mobilize the community to stop outside contractors so that our locals can benefit, that is what we will do. The budgetary allocation is for the people of Region 10 and for their development. And we cannot encourage a situation where more than half of the budgetary allocation in contracts are given to outsiders. We have a situation in our community where over 60% of the people are unemployed. Contracts given to contractors in the region provides employment opportunities, be it temporary or otherwise. It provides opportunities for families to be fed. And if contractors are given contracts who are not from the community, and more so on such a large percentage basis, then you are disenfranchising families from feeding themselves. And that is a position we in the region will not accept. And we will mobilize the community and demand that contracts are given to our locals, because that is how we will be able to empower our people. That is how we will be able to create employment for our people. And that is how our people will be able to feed themselves. And that is a position we are adamant about, and we will ensure that our people benefit from the proceeds of the region, and more so the fact that they are taxpayers. They are the one who contributes towards the development, all developmental projects in this country with the taxes that they pay, and they must benefit from it. So we will ensure, if needs be, mobilize the people so that our people can benefit.
Thank you, MP. Any other questions from the members of the media? I see the hand of Mr. Adam Harris.
Yes, for anybody on the panel, Linden at one time was considered very proactive. You have shut down that community on 3 or 4 occasions that I can remember. This time around, you allow yourself to be poked in the eye for 2 years without reacting. Have the proactive people left the community, or are you now nice, decent people who simply can't be bothered with, well, we're not going to fight, we're going to wait till they stop.
Plain always had nice and decent people, and we always.
So let me respond, and then I'll allow MP as well to follow it. For the period 2015 to 2020, we were privileged to see a number of developmental projects being given the green light. So whether it's the synthetic track, whether it's the signing or the feasibility study from the road from Linden to Mobura, these projects were all conceptualized under the coalition government. The reason we believe that Region 10 is being targeted strategically and intentionally is because if you check sometime back in the newspaper, you would have seen that it is this government's intention to have another road built which will cut out completely Linden and Region 10. So if you read through the clause in the document for the Linden to Mobura road project, I'm sure that you will find there that for that project to receive the blessing of the international community or the financiers, and even our brothers in Brazil, our southern neighbor, there is a clause that speaks to stability of the region. What we believe is that the administration they're doing these things to rile up the residents of Linden so that they can take a similar position that they took in 2012 to say, listen, to the investors, this is a reason why you should not come to Linden, why you should not empower. They block the bridge, they do this. And so we have been saying to our people that we want those projects to be continued. They were projects that received the blessings of the coalition, and the agreements were, on the day when, let me give you an example. On the day when Rudy Small placed handcuffs on the gates and locked out doctors, nurses, a baby that had to do a surgery the morning, and a pregnant woman who was about to deliver, there were low-flying aircraft doing their final surveying of the road there. We believe that it was well coordinated, that they thought that by residents going on that bridge and block it, it would have solidified their point as the reason why that project should be discontinued. We have seen that they have already removed the bridge. So in any case, we believe that this would have been the nail in the coffin. So if Region 10 comes out and they take a similar position like they did, then it's grounds to say why the road should not continue there along the Mobura to Linden corridor. And that is one example.
Thank you, Regional Chair. I don't know, Ms. Elise?
Yes.
I don't know if you have anything you want to add before we wrap up the press conference.
Thank you, Madam. My concern is that as it relates to the housing development in Central Amina's ward, being the councillor responsible for the area, we would have learned from the residents in the area that there were at least two meetings by one of, I think it's the minister within the Ministry of Housing, who went to the area, identified the residents in there, and even put markings on the buildings or properties that they had, and asked them to, said to them that they were going to return and regularize the area. Sad to say, when we went on the ground and we witnessed those properties, some of those properties were evidently destroyed with the markings on them. And so the question is asked, what is the reason behind the whole destruction? Because when you go in, they're saying they're opening a road, but when you look, the consistency of the destruction is not pleasing to the eyes, because you go, you follow the route that they're taking, you go into some holes and you see properties destroyed, and you can't say whether the road is coming from the east, it's coming from the west, it's coming from the north or the south, but there are properties all around. What one particular property that really caught the eyes of the public and actually brought tears to men and women is a property that was at the perimeter beam, where they destroyed the walls, took the excavator and actually dug the foundation, destroyed everything and mixed it up. We had another property that was like 30 inches by, the foundation was 30 inches by 12 inches, tremendous pieces of steel in the foundation. That building was 45 by 50. Every piece of that foundation was removed. So and there's no indication that you're coming from the east, you're coming from the west, the north, or the south. So the question is asked, where is the road actually going? In July last year, the government would have come to Region 10 with the big housing drive, and they would have sold hundreds of house lots to young people. Being the councillor for the area, persons are asking me, when are they going to get the house lots? Because no house lot has been issued to any one of those persons, to my knowledge, since they would have sold the house lots. And so the question is, what is the plan for housing to desist the residents from actually going into squatting again? As it relates to the contracts, and we have our own issues as the person responsible for signing off the final payment document. Since 2020, we've been discussing at Public Works Committee meetings, we've been discussing at statutory based on the recommendations, and they have been carried. And to date, I'm still waiting to sign one of those documents. We have had substandard work discussed at meetings. We've had no response of change or anything. No response of change or anything. No sanction was given to any contractor, but when the question is asked about payments, we understood that the payments were already made. Looking at the Public Works the PAC meeting, we would have been guided as councillors as to some of the things that we needed to look for, especially when we're doing contracts. And we've learned so much, but yet we used to see those things happening. And even though we would have taken the decisions at statutory, we're not getting anywhere with it. The Public Works Committee has its challenges. The last meeting and a few meetings before, we don't see any officer from the Public Works Department coming to meetings. Nevertheless, we still carry through with our meetings, and we still serve the people of Linden with pride and gratitude to ensure that they do what they're expected to do. And we do what we are expected to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. I see two hands here. I guess I will have to start with Mr. Dennis, and then we'll take Mr. Wendell. Mr. Wendell, you'd like to go ahead? I don't know if Mr. Shabal
was stuck. Not hearing too well. All right. Mr. Adams or Mr. Figueroa, could you confirm to me, right, that it was said that there is an adequate storage facility in the region for the medical supplies, which is being stored at this private facility instead? And you also said that several letters were written to the president regarding a number of issues. Was a letter written on this particular issue?
Yes. A letter was written on the issue. In fact, it's here. It was sent to the regional executive officer, and it was copied to the National Procurement Tender Administration Board, the PAS Finance, economists at the Ministry of Finance, on this very issue, right? As it relates to the bond. And of course, as I indicated, if you look at the Bamia Health Facility, there is enough room in that compound to build another hospital. And so rather than spending close to $1 million a month to rent that facility, which, by the way, I think the contract stipulates that it was the Ministry of Health who activated that process, but it is the RDC who is paying for it, which is denying the region of some other project that could have been done from savings or something else. Why isn't it that the Ministry of Health is paying for this facility? Or budget, they could have placed it in the budget for 2022 and have a facility built right at the Bamia compound there. There's enough space.
Wendell, this issue was brought up yesterday at the Public Accounts Committee, and similar questions were put concerning this particular bond. And the regional health officer indicated that there was a need for this bond because of COVID, and there wasn't any storage capacity at the hospital. And I inquired what are some of the items being stored in the bond, and he said gloves and face mask, face shield, and such like. But we had COVID since 2019. 2020 passed, you brought this in 2021. And it is concerning, and I see this as an act by the administration to put money in their friend's pocket. This bond is at a private residence of who is the Prime Minister's representative in the region. Over $900,000 is being placed in the Prime Minister rep's private residence, where there's this supposed bond to house face masks and gloves. And rightfully, there are a number of health facilities within the region, of which these particular items in the bond could be stored. It is the very said individual who the region is paying over $900,000 for the rental of a space under his bottom house, receives all of the food hampers the government sends to the region. It is not being given to the Regional Democratic Council, where the elected officials are, to disperse the hampers, and that is why we would have seen hundreds of hampers spoiled, because they're selectively given supporters of the PPP, and there's not much. That's why the hampers are spoiling. We are in a predominantly coalition supporters, of which over 95% of the people are coalition supporters. So you're sending hundreds of hampers, and you selectively have to pick and choose who to give, because you're playing politics with the distribution of resources that are for the people. It is the taxpayers' money that pays for these hampers. These hampers aren't being paid at Freedom House expense. It is being paid by taxpayers of this country. And if hampers are to be given to those in need, it shouldn't be on a color or a party affiliation. It should be for the people of the country, and more so those who are in need. So we are saying that this issue has to be thoroughly investigated. Requests were made by the Public Accounts Committee for further answers to be given, particularly with regards to this bond that is on a contract for over a year now. So we really need clarity, and in a week's time, that clarity is supposed to be given, because a timeline was put by the Public Accounts Committee for answers towards this issue concerning the bond, and we await those responses from the Executive Officer of the region.
Thank you, MP. Okay, so I see the hand of Mr. Adam Harris, and I think we're about close to wrapping up.
All right. This is a quick one, and this is for Mr. Maipal. Mr. Maipal, you're the Shadow Minister for local government. Now today we heard a lot of things going on in the local government sector. How active are you in your role to allow these things to happen? And we've been meeting, we have press conferences, and you never say a word about these things. How much pressure can you put on your local government counterpart to make sure that what's happening to Linden don't continue happening?
Thank you very much for the question, Adam. Let me first of all say that we are, as members of parliament, we are currently engaged in a CPA training session, where we are allowed the opportunity to share our concerns with our counterparts in other regions, and we are allowed to give our view in terms of our challenges and our opportunities as members of parliament. And I intend to bring to the attention of the entire CPA participants what are some of those challenges. you will recall, Adam, as a member of the media, that there are a number of questions that I put to the Honorable Minister of Local Government and Regional Development, and the manner in which he answers the question does not give us the opportunity to understand why they are behaving in this manner. And sadly, that is being facilitated by the Speaker of the National Assembly. We have complained to many, many organizations that are related to our Parliament, and we will continue to do that. I continue to also engage with Chairman Deron Adams, Chairman Daniel Siram, and Chairman Kenneth Williams, who bring these matters to my attention, and I would give them advice from time to time as I see fit. Additionally, I will craft questions and would have crafted a number of questions and put it to the Minister of Local Government and Regional Development and the other ministers with respect to what is happening in these particular 3 regions. I will continue to do all that is possible to expose the work of the government in terms of them stymieing development in particularly these 3 regions, and I will continue to advocate for us to respect the laws, the democracy, the Chapter 2809, which speaks to regional government, Chapter 2802, which speaks to local government, and Chapter 2801, which speaks to the municipality. But a lot has to do with the media also assisting us in exposing the wrongdoing of this administration, this local government ministry, and how they are administering the affairs of local governance. Something to note is that the tiers of governance has the local government, which is the NDCs and municipalities, regional government, which is RDCs, and then central government. But because of the imposition of these regional executive officers at the level of the RDC, there is gross disrespect for the elected regional officials. I reminded Comrade Adams, Comrade Siram, and Comrade Williams before that the REOs are creatures of the council, and they have to execute decisions of the council. And I am not the only person who said this. The Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs said this also. So it is expected for these REOs to function within that capacity. What I can tell you, Adam, is that we are currently in the stage of preparing court documents so that we can seek legal guidance on the functioning of these REOs, and we can get legal guidance in terms of the interference that the minister is having with reference to these local authority areas. You would remember, Adam, as recent as the last parliament, I asked a question pertaining to internal elections within neighborhood democratic councils and municipalities, which is by law supposed to happen every year. This has nothing to do with GCOM and its preparedness for local government election, but rather it has everything to do with you having an elected council and you having an election internally to determine who is the elected chairman, vice chairman, mayors, and deputy mayors. And you can go back on the Parliament website and check the video. You will see how Dharamlal circumvented and gone all over the place as though he's intellectually circumcised on the matter. But the fact of the matter is, he is incompetent. He has proven himself to be not trustworthy to deal with local government and regional development, and we are asking you and all other media operatives to expose these heinous acts of corruption, I will term it as, and help us to bring our democracy back to its rightful strength. Thank you very much, Sessional Chair.
Thank you, MP. I do believe Mr. Dennis' hand is just stopped. So at this time, I do believe Mr. Dennis,
Yes.
your hand is up.
Yes, it is.
Okay, well, go ahead. You'll be our last question for the press.
Yes, going back to this issue of the small contractors, can you, your chairman or Mr. Figueroa, say whether they have had instances of these contractors being informed that they are not compliant as regards NIS and GRA during the tendering process?
So I can say to you that based on those who would have approached us, they were compliant. These are not persons who just woke up yesterday and decided to tender. They have been a part of the process. They enjoyed that during the period 2015 to 2020, but for some reason or the other, they have just been left out of the process. They were compliant.
Thank you, MP.
And about how many of these have been applying, for tenders, for contracts, sorry?
A lot. What I can say to you is that when
What is a lot? Give me a figure, a working figure.
over 100 persons. And what we note is that when these tenders are being delivered or open in the region, you see persons coming from all over, Region 6, Region 2, coming into Region 10, and being just given 4, 5, 6. They haven't even completed one and they're getting another. And they bring everything with them. The food stuff, everything. So they don't do any shopping in Linden or in the region. Everything comes from out of the region. I want to also, before I close, make an important point that Region 10 is the only region that will not see an intake or a program for both the nursing professional and the nursing assistant program. This is despite these new students just out of school. Many of them applied, they were accepted, and I think 3 months into the program, they were told that the program would be discontinued. So regions 1 to 9, they're doing training for both the professional and nursing assistants, but in region 10, it has been suspended. This is despite over 50 nurses from Linden Hospital Complex they would have already left for the UK. Another batch is slated to leave for greener pastures, and as a result of the actions of the very CEO, he has been able to make unilateral decisions. Like, it is alleged that he woke up and decided that the Linden Hospital Complex has too many beds. And he comes up with a proposal that some of the beds should be removed from Linden Hospital and be sent to Region 6. And so he is toxic for that environment. Many of the young people who would have purchased expensive medical books, like the Principles of Anatomy and Physiology for Nursing, Medical Surgical Nursing, close to $45,000 for one of these books. And after they would have invested, they were told that the program will be closed in Region 10. However, 6 persons were called back for the program. The information that we have, bearing the last names Dindilal, Pearson, and I think the other one was Cornelius. And so that should be of concern. That why is it that only, I think it was about 5 persons or 6, but I vividly remember those 3 names, were called back for the program. And these very students said that they received a phone call saying that not to worry, you will be called back, the program will be put back on the agenda, because they just wanted to make sure that there were some nurses who were coming from other regions and they want to train them so that they can go back. But we have information that suggests that officials from the Ministry of Health assured these persons, and that is why they made the investment, that they were going to be called back to continue the program. They were never called. And this is information that I'm happy today that we were able to bring to your attention. And we ask that you do that investigation. We're calling for the removal of Rudy Small. He would have fired 27 auxiliary staff, kitchen attendants, maids, cooks. And this was we were only able to capture this because he attempted to do it in a batch. He had to be instructed from someone higher up. And so many other persons are now sending letters to us where they were dismissed. As I indicated, persons who received employment, single parents, women, under the Patient Care Assistance Program. They are attempting to dismantle all of those initiatives where jobs were created for young people under the previous government. We don't want a flippant handout of temporary jobs. We want permanent jobs where people can sustain and provide for their families. And so we're happy that today we were able to bring this to the national media's attention, and that we hope that it will activate something that this administration would, stop the nonsense, stop targeting Region 10.
Let me add this nursing school issue is a very important issue, and we would really appreciate the media following up on this. Now, when we would have brought this earlier up in 2021, I believe, one of the comments from the ministry is that the Charles Roses School of Nursing, they're seeing an influx of students from Linden, and they basically want to provide opportunities for our bordering regions, which the community has no challenge or difficulty in accepting. But the fact of the matter is the Charles Roses School of Nursing will always have a majority of students from the community because it's closer to the students of the community, just like the campus in Berbice. There are far more Berbicians attending the Berbice campus than any other parts of the region, because the campus is in Region 6 and Berbicians are more likely to attend, likewise in Linden. And that is why the Serapati College of Education in Region 10 has produced so many trained teachers. Because after teaching is nursing in the region where a lot of students opt to go. So we are saying you cannot disenfranchise a community's young people from having opportunities to venture into a career that they would have studied during the secondary school period and say, this is what I want to venture in as a career. And they're being disenfranchised because they're from Region 10. How can you facilitate all of the other 9 regions and leave Region 10 out? That is ridiculous. It's totally absurd. So we're saying good sense must prevail so that young people within the community who are desirous of participating in a program to provide healthcare services to Guyana. When you are trained as a nurse, you're not trained for a particular region because your contract states specifically that you are being employed to serve in the profession for Guyana. So you cannot make such a ridiculous decision to disenfranchise young people who want to go into the profession. And the fact that they would have invested heavily in the purchasing of these resources, these textbooks, good sense must prevail and allow these young people an opportunity to go into the community and serve. Region 10 is in dire need of a university, an arm of the university, and that's why the leader of the opposition would have made this call. A number of residents in the community traverse the highway that is in a very deplorable state to study at the University of Guyana at Turkine. But a lot of those who want to go cannot because of the rent in Georgetown. It's very costly. And if an arm is put there, and I hear the vice president talking about capacity and the thoughts of how an arm should go there. But these same thoughts weren't put in a campus in Region 6. So there is need for opportunities for education and higher learning to be afforded to the people of Region 10. And we call on the Minister of Health to reopen the nursing school and ensure that the opportunities are made available for the youths of Linden and Region 10 to go into the nursing program and become qualified healthcare providers to serve Guyana, not Linden and Region 10, to serve Guyana. We have seen an exodus of nurses, trained nurses, to the UK and other far fields. And we're saying that the region is in need of better healthcare service and better healthcare managers. And that is why I join with the chairman in calling for Rudy Small to be removed from the entire space of Region 10. He's toxic and he's no good for healthcare delivery in the region.
Thank you very much, MP. At this time,
you must ask the man why he does everything in the US. He can't go back, he being crazy.
Miss Adam Harris.
Do your homework, you're going to find out that the man, they're bad. I want to do the story, but I got to talk to you first.
Yes, please do that, Mr. Adam Harris. At this point, we will call today's press conference to an end. And again, thank you to the media for listening and staying with us throughout this week. And thank you as well to our viewers online. Do have a wonderful afternoon.